Good day, everyone. Our topic is all about history and historiography, meaning and relevance. So, we all know that history helps us to understand everything. It helps us in understanding the world, people, and the society. Studying history is important because it allows us to understand our past, which in turn allow us to understand our present. It also gives us an idea about the state of art, literature, culture, and civilization. But in this chapter, we will discuss the meaning of history, etymological development, historical methodology, and historiography. Emphasis will be given to the effort of Filipino scholar to develop a Filipino philosophy as basis of historical interpretation. So, meaning and importance of history. History has a various definition or meaning and importance based on different philosophers. Socrates, in his dialect, argued the importance of coming up with terms before engaging in a discourse. In this way, there will be a common ground for the exchange of discussion. On the other hand, the appropriation of meaning is complicated, for it has to consider several factors, the history and the culture. Aside from the reason stated, the power that emanates from one who controls the discourse is also a factor to consider. To quote Napoleon Bonaparte, what is history but a fable agreed upon on? Based on Gottschalk 1969, the term history has evolved from its present connotation. Utopia, which means to learn, at present connotes the past events. Parnis 1963 defined history as history is concerned with the study of human past. We can give three attribution of meanings to the concept based on Schaffer 1974. First, it deals with past events. Second, the records of past events such as chronicles, annals, official record like birth certificate and marriage certificates. Third, history as an academic discipline. Dr. Zeus Salazar, 2000, defined history as mga pangyayari na may saysay para sa mga grupo ng taong sinasaysay nito. Salazar advocated the use of Filipino in his historical discourse. History defined by foreign scholar. It is the record of what is one age finds worthy of notes in another. Based on Carr, history is a study of human achievements. So whatever differences historian may give, still the term suggests past events. Although it means past, it cannot be narrowed down to the records of past events only. Likewise, even though the subject of history is past events, nobody can deny that it connotes many implications that affects the life of people and future of the country. As defined by Medina, history is not just the past but also the present and the future. History is just a forward projection. It is a social construction of a future reality. For these authors, the writing of history is a political endeavor. Since history is a continuous process, it is a good vehicle to use in directing future of a country. This brings to the question posed by Keith Jenkins about history and power. For Keith Jenkins, history can never be and will never be oneself. It is always for one person. History is a form of power wherein the direction of arrangement of the past discussed. In this case, the subject that will be privileged and will mutate is based on tactics of organizing and sequencing events and past systems according to individual outlook, interest, objectives, or goals. A prominent historian, Samuel Tan, defined history as dynamic process of dealing with the past in which stages or aspects of development are interrelated, brought upon by understanding of present and the future. History is a collective interplay of events. Tan views of history give us broader outlook in dealing with the past events. His definition of history gives us a clue that history is the achievement of different people in a particular time, not just a work of a particular group of people in a particular place. This view of Tan was supported by a prominent nationalist historian, Renato Constantino, who emphasizes that history is achievement of man, not the individual but the collective. Therefore, we cannot assume that the history is a primary work of an individual leader but a collective effort of the people. With his definition, Constantino strengthened the history from below. Following Mach's idea of history, Constantino views the masses as the real mover of history. But the question is, why do we need to study history? This is a perennial question of a very inquisitive mind, as suggested by Stems. History must be studied because it is a significant both to society and the people, for it helps us better understand ourselves, our strength, our limitation, and aspiration. Historical events remind us of the collective experience of people, its suffering, joy, aspiration, and all these things serve as glue towards realization of a nation. The study of history became possible with the development of writing. The invention of writing could be considered as one of the most important inventions of human civilization because it gave men the instrument to record their achievements. The important invention of human civilization ended with prehistoric age and marked the beginning of historic era. So history can be divided into different branches as follows. General history, which covers political, economic, diplomatic, and military history. Economic history covers with economic thoughts and economic system, while cultural history, which covers local history and ethnic history, and social history and myth history. Although much of our history is devoted to political history, historians of today have included and emphasized economic and socio-cultural history as an important part of their discourse. So that's all for the meaning and importance of history. So next is history and Philippine historiography. On the other hand, historiography is art of writing. It also refers to the theory and history of historical writing. The term historiography is rooted from a Greek word historia, which means past, and graphir, which means to write. Although the writing of history can be traced 1,000 years ago, historiography and the scientific way of writing history gained prominence only in 1900s. Recent development of historiography broadened the basis of history. The new historicism pioneered by Michael Foucault provide new perspective in terms of historical interpretation. Data like oral history, folklore, indigenous materials, and the and like which traditionally cannot be considered as sources of history are now considered as possible sources of history. This trend also looked into the silences in history. Bakhtin noted silences, not just the voice in history, are important. Bakhtin means for his definition of history is that writing was also important in history and not just the voice. These developments strengthen the effort of Filipino historians to write a history that will serve the Filipino people and historiography that will offer a Filipino perspective. In the term in the Philippines, the dominance of the colonial discourse has challenged Filipino historians to write history of the Philippines using a discourse that will privilege the Filipinos. Filipino historian like Agoncillo, Lieto, Guerrero, Jokno, Salazar, and others work hard to counter the colonial historiography that dominated Philippine historiography for the long time. The accumulation of new data and development of new theories gave Filipino historians many aspects of Philippine history that were left unexplained. Historians, with the help of other disciplines like archaeology, anthropology, psychology, linguistics, and other disciplines, faithfully reconstructed the Philippines past using Filipino perspective. The post-EDSA period gave a new direction for Filipino historians. The move to use Filipino as medium of instruction had gained support for different historians with the development of Jesus Salazar and advocates the Pantayong Pananaw gave new direction to the study of history. Using Filipino as medium, they define history as ang kasaysayan ay isang salaysay tungkol sa nakalipas na may saysay sa isang grupo ng tao. With this definition, the study of history is redirected to what people believe to be important to them. This is the reason for the study of oral tradition, culture, and local history which are privileged in discourse of the Pantayong Pananaw. So that's all for the history and Philippine historiography. Next is the development of Philippine historiography. Historical consciousness is innate among the Filipinos, as reflected in the popular saying, ang hindi marunong lumingon sa kanyang nakaraan ay hindi makakarating sa kanyang paroroonan. This indicates that the Filipinos have an intrinsic love for their past. For so many years, Filipino historians became followers of a very rigid tradition in writing history, a tradition based on positivism. Positivism holds that historical knowledge and interpretation ought to be based upon verifiable data gathered after examination of documents through external and internal criticism. Because of the weakness of this tradition, a new historical approach known as New Historicism emerged. It seeks the interpretation of facts from all perspectives, includes those that do not concern history before. In the Philippines, as early as 1960s, historians exerted efforts to broaden the base of their historical sources and provide new and fresh interpretation that challenge the traditional discourse in history. Leslie Buason, in the article entitled Perspective on Contemporary Philippine historiography, emphasizes the need to develop a methodology for interpretative historical analysis within the context of Philippine society. He argued that the social scientists are using was based on Western models which do not fit the Philippine settings. Under this condition, Filipino historians are constrained to view Philippine history on the perspective of the Filipinos. And this will be tackled by the next reporter.